I neglected to pick up a Bible. Would you, Victor, would you please? There's usually one up here, and I didn't see that. Thank you very much. If you'd like to follow along, I'll be reading from the last book of the New Testament, which is called Revelation, and it is chapter 22, verses, I'm going to read 1 through 5. It's on page 260 in the New Testament section of your Pew Bible, if you'd like to follow along. Whoops. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. On either side of the river is the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, producing its fruit each month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Nothing accursed will be found there anymore, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. And there will be no more night. They need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever. This is the climax of this book called Revelation. It is an account, get this, it is an account of a person's vision. Oh, that's last week's sermon. Welcome to my world. Okay, there we go. No wonder I couldn't find the children's sermon. Okay. But that's a good little reminder that Revelation is written by a person or comes out of a community. It's a vision. It comes from a very different time, a very different worldview. It's good to remember that. I've been gardening in the same location. Oh, I forgot something else. Okay. See how much I rely on Jeffrey? I Googled or looked up a tree of life on the internet that I could use copyright, had copyright permission for, and this is one of the pictures came up, but there was another picture that came up that I had to have to put up for all of our cat lovers in the church. Yeah. I don't understand it, but I thought maybe you would. All right, let's get back to the tree of life. I have been gardening in the same location for over 30 years. And when people tell me they think climate change is not real or that it's exaggerated, I imagine they must be very disconnected from tending any land. I used to call the month of June the month of purple. I did. June was when the jacaranda trees and lily of the Nile, otherwise known as agapanthus, that's when they bloomed. That's when they started blooming. June was also the month that I started picking blackberries because they're starting to ripen, and they're really more purple, right, than they are black. About 15 years ago, I started noticing some changes. The blooming and the ripening were happening a little earlier. The jacaranda trees now bloom. They start in the middle of May. And I have been picking blackberries for the last week and a half. And that heat wave we had not too long ago, I lost probably about a pint of blackberries because they said, oh, it's too hot, I can't take it. They're gone. I've had to change when I start just about everything in the garden. The timetable's completely different than it was 30 years ago, and often unpredictable. The change was gradual at first, but it has become more dramatic over the last 5 years. I grew up when the weather report, maybe some of you remember this, that called for June gloom. And now, as if nothing has changed, they call it May gray. We just shifted it back. The science is no longer debated. in rational circles. So it mystifies me. Mystifies me that there is such a lack of will to take care of this which is our home. This island we live on, people, it's an island in the vacuum of space. The river at the end of Revelation is called the river of the water of life. Crystal clear. Stark contrast to the rivers that are poisoned in the eschatological catastrophes noted in chapters 8 and 16. One is polluted with wormwood. You've heard about wormwood. It's a poison and people died from it. One was polluted with blood. Wouldn't want to drink that. And then the Euphrates is the only one that's named in the book. The Euphrates is just dried up. Kind of like the Colorado River that no longer goes to the Gulf. This river is also like the river in the prophet Ezekiel, described as flowing from the temple itself. And this river of the water of life runs through the entire city of God, making the land fruitful. The tree of life, of the water of life, appears to span both sides of this river, and it has 12 kinds of fruit. It's its own Fruit of the Month club. Did you know that in Ezekiel, a similar vision is reported? On the banks of both sides of the river, there will grow all kinds of trees for food, and they will bear fresh fruit of every month. It's the original Fruit of the Month Club in Ezekiel. The leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations, not just one nation, not even an alliance of nations, but all the nations. There seems to be an indication of inclusiveness. We're in this proverbial boat together, and that means all the nations need to row in the same direction, which is a tall order for sure. Climate, weather, it does not care a hoot about borders of any kind. We are bequeathing to future generations an economy that cannot sustain life on this planet. Something has to change, at least if we want to bequeath something more productive and fruitful to the generations that follow us. The market economy is not the panacea that pundits would have us believe. Profit for the sake of profit has been raised to the level of idolatry for centuries. Nothing new to humankind. What is new is if we are paying attention, we recognize the folly of this religion, this cult that takes no heed of people or the planet. If it's good for business, too bad for you people and too bad for you planet. That's what we hear. Instead, there is a different vision. It's called the triple bottom line: people, the planet, and profit. They have to coexist. They must be held equally valid and valuable. And they certainly haven't been during my lifetime. We need a well-being economy. And believe it or not, there are cities throughout our country that are working on building a well-being economy that benefits people, the planet, and makes a profit. We cannot recycle or conserve our way out of the mess we're in. There's just no way. Systemic harms call for systemic solutions. You can do as much as you want individually and feel self-righteous about that. Great. But if you're not also joining hands with other people to make a systemic difference, you just need to get out of the way of the rest of us. That's all I'm saying. Chirp Solar Works is a company in Pomona. It is a project of the California-based 501c3 Community Home Energy Retrofit Project. That's a lot of words, isn't it? It's here. It's in the old Indian Hill Mall where the Pomona Unified School District has its some offices, its child care development program, and more. This is the mission of CHIRP. Our mission is to extend the reach of renewable energy to economically disadvantaged communities. We're dedicated to creating green sector jobs, particularly for those with barriers to entry in the workforce. We aim to stimulate local economies, pursue environmental justice, achieve greenhouse gas reductions. The guy who started this is a brilliant engineer, and as I've been told, the solar panels that he's designed and they are building here in Pomona are among the most efficient ever built. So through a licensing agreement with an organization called Ideal PV, they go on in their mission statement, we will be producing the world's most advanced solar panels in a nonprofit assembly factory in Pomona, California, which I was privileged to be in last week. We're also incubating a network of distributed manufacturing centers called Locally Grown Power National Solar Factory Network in economically disadvantaged and environmentally burdened communities across the country. Pomona, and all of you who don't live here, who live around Pomona, we are among the most environmentally burdened communities in the entire nation. It's time to clean it up, right? Time to clean it up. This is one small sample of thousands and thousands of efforts to address climate change and income inequality, of which there is more today than in decades. We are experiencing the disruptions, the economic disruptions of the current way we do business. We've always done it that way before, remember the 7 last words of any organization? But we can't keep doing business based on a need for fossil fuels. It's not sustainable. And those economic disruptions impact the most economically vulnerable, the poor. And who did Jesus tell us to serve? The teachings of Jesus are crystal clear about caring for the vulnerable, as clear as that river running through the city of God that supports a tree with healing leaves and fruit all year long. We gotta take care of the trees. They take care of us. And you may be wondering, well, what can I do? I don't control the economy. Stop harassing me about this. No one of us does. But all of us together can step out in faith and courage, and believe me, it will take and does take courage to embrace a more life-giving economy in which people are not left behind. A life-giving economy that does not destroy our very home. There is a reason that this congregation is a green chalice congregation, something in our denomination for being supportive of the planet Earth and being more sustainable, regenerative, and the like. We were already doing all the things that Green Chalice Ministry was asking congregations to do. So we said, oh, we can sign up for that. That's a pretty low bar. We don't have to do anything. Congratulations, First Christian Church. And just because we met someone else's expectation, that doesn't mean we should stop there. And we haven't. Well done. Beyond those initial energy-saving, waste-reducing actions taken years ago, we took out most of the lawn around this huge campus. We installed drip irrigation with drought-tolerant plants and trees. And we planted a fruit orchard to help Hope Partners feed people fresh fruit through their food security sites. Did you know that we sit on top of 2 watersheds coming together? There are 2 rivers that run through and under our campus. And we produce trees and fruit. Think of a moment Think of a moment in which you felt the presence of God, in the experience of God's creation. Maybe you were at a river, a crystal clear river, or in an orchard of some kind. Or maybe you were at a lake, or the ocean. It might have been on a mountain or in a desert, a park or a garden. Now go back to that moment in which you felt God near to you, in the thunder of waves or the lapping of water or in the sound of leaves rustling in the wind, in the quiet of a dawn, a moment when the felt sense of sacred presence was giving itself to you in the brilliance of day or the glimmering of a night sky, giving itself to you completely. In that moment, God was giving God's own self to you. And God is always giving this way to us, infinitely giving God's self away to each of us every moment, and longing for us to return the love. Could we practice receiving this gift of God in and through the gifts of God's creation every day? Could we do that? And if we could return the favor and gaze upon God in self-giving, self-forgetting love through the lens of creation, this mutual admiration and devotion, might that transform how you walk and work and wander through this world? If we could but open our being to the becoming of God that emerges every day around us, would we risk falling in love with all of God's creation as God has loved it and loves it still, and loves us all into being? Amen.